Today I'm going to burn an illustration I spent a week creating. And I don't mean burn the edges of it to age it a bit. I'm going to completely destroy it, safely, with fire. Why? Keep watching to find out. If you just found me, by the way, my name's Jo. I'm a full-time artist based on a narrowboat in Wales. I think in a recent video I mentioned that every artist should be making bad art. Making bad art is a sign that you're growing and developing as an artist. Trying things you've never tried before is the only way to develop new skills. And whilst you might get lucky sometimes and stumble upon something that you're naturally good at straight away, quite often it's going to take a little bit longer to figure things out. It takes time, practice, and a lot of patience to get to the point where you're happy with what you make. The trouble is, as artists, we get very attached to our art. We put our heart and soul into what we make, and of course we want other people to like it too. I've seen so many artists and creatives recently struggling to sell their art online and saying how they feel like a failure when they don't get the response they were expecting. Now, when your products aren't selling, you basically have three choices. You can carry on making the same thing and wait for things to improve. You can give up completely, or you can use the time to explore all those creative ideas that you never had a chance to try before. I chose the third option, and so far it's been quite a journey. Every time you try a new art medium or technique, you're kind of taking a risk. You're committing time and sometimes costly materials to a project that might not work. Although I've made a living through making art dolls for the last few years, part of me has always wanted to be an illustrator. Ever since I was in primary school reading Beatrix Potter books and marvelling at the intricate little illustrations. So I decided that this year, being as it's a little bit quieter than it usually would be, it'd be a good time to delve into some different techniques and materials and get over my fear of ink and watercolour. I started out very much in my comfort zone with kind of scribbly line work and a bit of cross-hatching. Then I found a set of Derwent Inktense paint pans in a local art shop and started exploring the use of colour. My usual attitude to art is don't overthink it. Finish a piece, get it out there and let the audience decide whether they like it or not while you get on with the next piece. My first few illustrations have been pretty well received, so I ordered some greetings cards and some prints and started developing working relationships with some local retailers to get my art out into real-life shops. And so far it's looking pretty promising. So why am I sitting here about to throw my latest illustration onto the log burner? There's a learning model called the 4 stages of competence, which can be applied to any new skill you're learning. And once you become aware of it, it's interesting to see yourself in that and to experience moving through the 4 stages in real time. When I first started seriously drawing and painting a few years back, it was mostly just for fun and I didn't really care what people thought of it. I was happy just to put my art out there and let it take on a life of its own. This stage would be referred to as unconscious incompetence. In other words, you don't know what you don't know. You're learning a new skill that you're excited about and you just want to share it with the world. You don't know how much there is to learn and you're not that invested in it yet. You're just pleased to have learned something new and had some success and you haven't really failed yet. Then as you start to get a little bit deeper into a subject, you start to see the road ahead. You become aware of how much you don't actually know yet. You start to see the possibilities, but there's a huge cavernous gap between where you are now and where you want to be. This stage is called conscious incompetence. In some respects with illustration, I feel like that's where I am now. I'm confident in some aspects of illustration work, but the more I study, the more I see the possibilities, and the more I realise I've still got so much to learn. As it starts to dawn on me that I could actually make a living from illustration, it feels like the stakes are suddenly higher. I don't want to put out a piece that I'm not happy with. I see so many amazing illustrators online, and I see what I might be able to achieve in the future. Obviously, I have no intention to copy anyone else's work, but I see people creating these amazing, intricate compositions that tell a whole story, using colour to paint light and shadow. And I want to do that. The more I learn about the process of things like watercolour painting, the more I see how much skill actually goes into it. I think the trouble is I compare my day 1 to their day 1,000 or 5,000. And I want to run before I can walk. I know I can draw. It's not effortless by any means, but if you gave me an object to copy, I could make a pretty accurate representation of it. This is a stage we call conscious competence. You know what you're doing at this stage, but it still takes effort to produce a good result. When you reach the point where you can do something confidently without having to really try or think about it, then you've reached the fourth stage, which we call unconscious competence. This is where you can get into a flow state and things kind of happen naturally. For me, art has never been about showing off how well I can draw. I could spend weeks drawing a highly detailed picture of a cat, for example, but I don't get any enjoyment out of that. So what's the point? I'm more interested in visual storytelling. What I want to create is a unique style that captures the imagination of the viewer and takes them somewhere. I want the viewer to experience the same sense of wonder that I had reading those Beatrix Potter books as a kid. And I know I still have a long way to go. What I'm working on at the moment is improving composition. Rather than focusing on a single character, I want to be able to create a scene with multiple elements that all kind of gel together. In theory, I know the basics of perspective and composition. But when you start to build fantasy worlds where the comparative size of characters and their environments don't match the world that we live in, it gets a little bit more tricky to portray what you want to portray without it looking wrong or odd. This is something I personally find quite difficult. My brain likes to focus on one detail at a time, and sometimes I have trouble taking in the whole picture all at once and making everything work together. I wanted to try and tackle this in my latest piece, but on this occasion I didn't get it quite right. It didn't quite all gel together and tell the story like I wanted it to. I was tempted to give up partway through, but I felt like I should finish it, so at least I was getting some practice with the Inktense, figuring out what works and what doesn't, and troubleshoot some issues with the media and learn how to create different effects. I do feel like I learned a lot from the process. By the time I realised the composition wasn't working, I didn't feel so pressured to make it work, so I was able to play around with it and make mental notes of what I want to work on more and what I want to leave behind. I could show you the finished piece, but I've decided I'm not going to. I've already critically appraised it. I know what I want to improve, so I don't really need anyone else's judgment. As I've said before, every artist should make bad art, but you should make it just for you. You don't have to share it with anyone. As long as you're learning from it, that's all that matters. As for this project, among many other things, it's taught me the art of letting go. Sometimes the point of a piece is to experience what you gain from making it. The result isn't actually all that important. I don't want to torture myself by looking at my mistake any longer, so it's time to lay this one to rest.